You probably use web apps every day, whether it's checking your email on Gmail, managing your projects in Trello, or streaming music on Spotify. But what exactly makes an app a web app? How do they work? And how do they differ from mobile apps? In this lesson, we're going to explore web apps from the ground up, break down their key components, and here's the fun part. We'll do a live screen share walkthrough showing you how to analyze real-world web apps to see what technologies are built with. And so by the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of how web apps function, how they integrate with mobile apps, and when you should consider building a web app first before going mobile. Let's dive in. So what is a web app? A web app is a software application that runs in a web browser. Unlike traditional mobile apps that you download from the App Store or Google Play, web apps don't need to be installed on your device. They are different from static websites though, because they offer interactive features, real-time data processing, and user authentication. Examples are Gmail, Google Docs, GitHub, and Figma. And so, why do companies build web apps? Well, technically they build them because 1, they're cross-platform accessibility, 2, no installation is required, and of course 3, lower development costs. Here's a very common web app that you most likely have heard of called Google. And what's good is that Google gives us a lot of different plugins when trying to figure out web apps and how they actually function. And so what I want you to do is to go to the Google Chrome tab right here. And when you're in the Google Chrome tab, type in BuiltWith Technology Profiler right here. So once you've actually installed it, step number 2 is to visit any web app you would like. For example, if we check out Shopify. Shopify is a web app that is actually a pretty cool one that most people don't realize isn't just a normal website. After clicking on the detailed area of our BuiltWith plugin, it gives us all the information towards the Shopify website and how it was built. The first thing we look at is the framework. And so now, what is a framework? A framework is a complete structure for building an application. It provides built-in tools, enforces rules, and controls the app's flow. And so the main features of frameworks are they're more structured, the inversion of control, and it comes with pre-built features. And so examples of JavaScript frameworks are AngularJS, Vue.js, Next.js, and Express.js. Let's check out a couple of frameworks that are very, very popular before I continue into this Shopify example. If we go to tailwindcss.com, you can see that these are actually very common websites. And look, we have the Shopify website that was built using the Tailwind CSS framework. It's a really design-friendly framework that developers use when trying to craft web pages. And so another framework that kind of uses this is Skims, to give you another example of Tailwind. If we go into Vue.js.org, where we actually find the frameworks for Vue.js, we can find, for example, the company Storyblock. And so this is a software that basically says it runs circles around CMS, which is customer management systems. But if we look at the built-in information, we can find the Vue.js in here. You can see that the Vue.js JavaScript library is being used with a couple of other frameworks as well. And so what's good with web apps is that they usually are always using multiple frameworks at the same time, sometimes in order to test certain functionalities out, but you don't have to truly understand which one's being used more than the other. It's just good to understand the architecture of your web app in the future if you want to build out certain features that are probably more compatible with certain frameworks than others. And so for another example that kind of uses the Vue framework is Nuxt. And so when we have, for example, frameworks that are very similar or that are built off of each other, Nuxt is a framework that's built off the framework Vue. I know that kind of sounds confusing, but let's just say Vue is the daddy in the whole entire framework world, and Nuxt is like the child that is using components from Vue in order to also build its own ecosystem. But what's crazy is that Vue, even though it's a fairly new framework, it is used by GitHub, OpenAI, NASA, Google, Fedora, GitLab, and Upwork. And so those are pretty crazy examples that are using this current framework. New frameworks come out all the time when it comes to building web apps. Another example of a framework is React.js. And I kind of wanted to stay on React.js a little bit because this is a software that we have currently used a lot in our own company. We definitely have a lot of experience when working with React because React is actually Meta's technology. React.js is basically what Facebook uses in order for them to service clients and service customers. React.js is coupled with something called React Native. And those two things are what make React.js for the web and React Native for the mobile. And so What are the differences? React.js, like I said, is used for building web applications. It runs in the browser and is rendered using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's ideal for single-page applications or SPA. And React Native, though, is used for building mobile apps, so iOS and Android. It runs natively on mobile devices instead of the browser. It uses also native components instead of HTML elements. And so when to use what? We usually use React.js if you're building a web app, which is kind of what we're talking about right now. And you use React Native if you need a mobile app with native performance. The reason why I'm talking about React more is because as a non-technical founder, this is one of those hybrid frameworks that you can use not only for web, but also mobile. And so staying between the same frameworks for web and mobile when you're creating cross-platform applications is a best practice moving forward. Since we're looking at frameworks, we have to also understand what are JavaScript libraries and obviously what's the difference. And so both frameworks and JavaScript libraries are essential tools for web and app development, but they serve basically different purposes. The JavaScript library is a collection of reusable functions and utilities designed to simplify specific tasks, such as managing data, interactions, or making API calls. The main key features are, one, it provides pre-written functions to speed up development. You can control how and when to use the library, and libraries are modular. You use only what you need. Examples of JavaScript libraries are jQuery, that basically simplifies DOM manipulation, Lodash, Axios, and React.js. And so now going back to the Shopify example, we're going to now look at the backend technology, which is the second most important thing to understand how it's built. If I go down here, you can see under the frameworks, the Ruby Rails token and Adobe Enterprise Cloud that's currently being used, and Ruby on Rails again, for their backend. And even though it's written under frameworks within this plugin, it's safe to know that this is a backend technology that's currently, or a backend framework that's being used for Shopify. And so knowing that's the second most important thing in our list, we then go to look at what is the database and hosting. And so usually we have databases like Firebase, PostgreSQL, or AWS. And so in our example here, we can see that they're also using Amazon S3 tiers, which is an Amazon cloud service in general used for stocking information and as well as CloudFront. So what's cool is that even though these technologies were detected in February 2025 or February 2024, it's safe to know that they usually go with databases that are more common. But you may find other databases, for example, ones that are called Contabo or even Google Cloud, even though that's also one of these databases that I can see here that's being used. And in general, you just have to keep an eye out when looking at these different structures of web apps, what is being used like this. You can apply this to your own idea. So now let's talk about how web apps and mobile apps work together. Many businesses need both web and mobile apps to provide a seamless experience. And so they have a shared backend, a cross-platform authentication, and real-time syncing. And so those are like the main reasons why they would want both of these things together. And so this is how businesses like Google, Facebook, and Slack create a unified experience across web and mobile. So I know that was a lot. So here's a recap of the best tools and software for web app development. So the front-end development, you use React.js. You go to react.dev.com. It's best for interactive UIs. Vue.js, Vue.js.org. Tailwind CSS, tailwindcss.com. And if we now talk about the backend development, we talk about Node.js and Express.js, that is on the nodejs.org. We talk about Django, Firebase, and also Ruby on Rails. If we talk about databases, PostgreSQL is best for structured data, MongoDB, Firebase Firestore. And then if we talk about API development and testing, I would say go on postman.com and GraphQL. And so finally, here are a couple takeaways. Web apps run in browser and work on all devices. Web and mobile apps often share the same backend for data syncing. And of course, choosing between web and mobile depends on your target audience and, of course, the speed to market that you're willing to go with. So without further ado, let's move on to the next lesson.